Okay, we're at part 2. Hopefully this won't cut off. When the days began to lengthen and the ground was warm again, Benjamin had completed his drawings. Now remember, he became curious with that pocket watch, and he was like, I want to make a bigger version of that. And he was mesmerized by all the reels and the dials and what he could discover with that. And he started making diagrams. And we know that he was a genius. He was so smart. He would read, he would study, he taught himself how to play the flute, how to play the violin. And he was someone that was like George Washington Carver and also Beethoven, because he liked to spend so much time in nature. Well, anyway, Benjamin had completed his drawings. Spring, with her bright sunny days, was the perfect time to start building his machine. There was a slight problem, however. What could he build with? The watch was made of metal, but metal was very expensive. In 1753, Benjamin did not have enough to spare for his project, nor could he afford to buy any. What could he do? What did he have? One day, while taking a break from his chores, Benjamin walked the path to his favorite spot. What do you think that favorite spot was? By the pond, the spring? Let's see. Oh yeah, under that chestnut tree, right? Leaning against the solid tree, Benjamin worried that he might not be able to finish his project. He played his wooden flute, looked like a recorder, to calm his mind. Oh, if we could just pick up more instruments. Oh my goodness. This reminds me of Wynton Marsalis, how he said one time he was in Missouri and he was reading the paper, and there were lists of National Merit Honor Society scholar recipients. And these high school students, were the top of the class. But 80%, he made this observation, 80% of those students studied music. It's something about when you pick up an instrument, when you cultivate the inner muse, that's where we get the music from, the word music and museum and amusement. When you cultivate that, there's something about the dendrites and synapses that strengthen, and oh my goodness, you just become smarter because you're multitasking. And I remember, I think it was Northwestern University had a study, and I believe they said that the number one extracurricular activity for it was either the engineering majors or the pre-med majors was marching band. Why? Because you have to multitask. You have to deal with rhythm, reading music, pitches, sight reading, keeping time, everything. Oh my goodness. So I think it's for surgeons. So if you want to become smart, start studying music. He played his wooden flute again. Suddenly he stopped. He looked at the land around him. The answer was right in front of him. Even in his hands, the very instrument he played was made of wood. Benjamin had plenty of wood on his farm, and it was free versus the expensive metal back in 1753. Spring turned into summer. The sun was high. The garden was growing, and Benjamin was excited to get started. He used every spare moment he had to find the perfect pieces of wood. Some he found by the creek, others he picked from his pear trees in the orchard. Once he had enough wood, Benjamin began to carve the clock pieces he had drawn in his diagrams. He carved as fast as he could, but soon his excitement turned to frustration. The pieces snapped and broke. Benjamin couldn't continue to carve until he figured out why the pieces were breaking, right? While he thought about his new problem, Benjamin tended his growing crops. As he was plucking bugs off his tobacco leaves, a thought came to him. When his family harvested the tobacco leaves, they had to cure them. Curing meant drying the leaves out until all the moisture was gone. Suddenly, Benjamin had an idea. If he could cure leaves, maybe he could cure wood. Yep, I had the same thought. The fresh wood he used was too soft and too moist. That's why it was bending and breaking. He must dry it out to make the wood stronger. Benjamin knew he had to be patient, like all of us have to be patient with new discoveries. Curing wood would be easy, but waiting for it to dry would take months. He picked out new pieces of wood and placed them in his family's tobacco shed The tobacco shed was a cool, dry place away from sunlight and away from bugs, perfect for curing. While the wood cured, Benjamin went back to work on his farm. We're talking about some productivity. Finally, winter was here, tucked under a thick blanket of snow. The farm was quiet. Harvest season had come and gone, and the pieces of wood were dried out and ready to be carved. Benjamin set out his drawings and sharpened his pocket knife. Then he began to carve. After all those months of curing the wood, Benjamin carved straight through the winter. He carved by the window until the sun set when it was too dark to see. He lit his candles and carved by their light. Using his sketches, he carefully carved the large pieces and the small pieces. He was diligent. Is there something, he had passion. Is there something you had passion where you work into the night or you can't wait till you get up to get to it? He carved and carved until finally the pieces of wood had become parts for a clock. Yeah, this is very inspiring. And I didn't know the backstory of Benjamin Banneker. By the time spring returned, Benjamin had finished carving all of the gears and wheels and small pins he needed to hold the wheels and gears together. He had even carved large pieces into what would become the clock's stand and case. Benjamin had every piece he needed. Every piece except one. There was one piece he could not make from wood. The bell. You need a metal for that, right? Benjamin bought his bell from a small shop in Elk Ridge Landing. His neighbors were excited to hear about his clock project. They couldn't wait to see it once he was finished with all of the clock's pieces now ready. Bit by bit, Benjamin began to fit everything together. He used his drawings to guide him. His toughest challenge was to get the hands on his clock to match up perfectly with the second, minute, and hour of each day. It took more than one try, but Benjamin had learned to be patient. He wouldn't give up now. That summer, when the light was bright and warm, Benjamin set his striking clock on the mantle. Timed with the sun, he set the hands and stepped back. It worked. When he first borrowed the pocket watch, Benjamin did not know it would take nearly 2 years to complete his project, but he remained focused. Over the seasons, he drew his diagrams, found and cured the wood, carved the pieces, and finally assembled his clock. The little iron bell chimed every hour on the dot for the next 40 years. His neighbors near and far came to see his amazing invention. How about that? Well, it's wonderful. The author, the note from the author. Benjamin Banneker was born November 9th. He just had a birthday if he was still alive, 1731, near what is now the town of Oella, Maryland. He lived a quiet life on a large farm with his parents, Robert and Mary Banneker, and his 3 younger sisters. Because he was raised in a rural area during the time of slavery, traditional school was limited to him. Whether free or enslaved, most African children in colonial America were forbidden to go to school. That's why we got to take advantage. They were not encouraged or even allowed to read. However, it is noted that Benjamin, perhaps because of his status as the son of a landowner or the kindness of his neighbors, attended elementary school for a few years. Despite the odds, Benjamin learned to read thanks to his grandmother, Molly Welsh, from her most prized possession, the Bible. As a young man, Benjamin would venture into town every few weeks. He purchased supplies, learned news about colonies, and solved math problems sent to him by neighbors and farmers. Benjamin's mental math, we do it today, ability was very popular. He was often asked to help his neighbors calculate the price of goods for the crops. Eventually, Benjamin made up his own math riddles for others to solve in return. It is suspected that one of the gentlemen he traded riddles with owned the small pocket watch he used to build his striking clock. Even after completing his amazing clock, Benjamin never stopped learning. Through books and his own observations, he studied many subjects such as science, astronomy, and engineering. Unfortunately, in 1806, several days after his death, Benjamin's cabin caught fire. All of his belongings, including the notes and journals detailing his careful observations and discoveries, were destroyed. However, several artifacts were uncovered during an excavation that pinpointed the exact location of Benjamin's cabin. These items included a bone knife handle, pottery shards, and a pipe, all of which are on display at the Benjamin Banneker Historical Park and Museum in Oella, Maryland. Shayna Keller. She grew up as a middle child in the middle of America. Wondering exactly how clouds stayed in the air, she traveled all over the country and some parts of Europe with her family and moved too many times again. She's settled in Pittsburgh for now, a city built just for kids. And she has a favorite quote from Benjamin Banneker: every day is an adventure in learning. She graduated from University of Miami, Florida, with a degree in communications and UCLA's screenwriting program. And she took a course in songwriting from Berklee College of Music. Her goal is to never stop learning. And that's the author. David Gardner, the illustrator, is an award-winning visual development artist, and his work has appeared in so many magazines. And he teaches illustration and visual development at Santa Fe University Art Design. Another talented one. Listen, lifelong learning, that's where it's at. Let's get busy, guys, spreading knowledge.